when we came on board, for once we tried to look at what has resulted into failures of gas flare commercialization, or if you like, gas flare reduction or gas flare elimination in the country. And before I proceed, let me say this clearly. The NNPC and the joint venture partners have done some good work. So if you take us back to 2001, when we were flaring about 50% of the gas we produce, as opposed to currently what we have now is 10%. The NNPs and the joint venture partners come into partnership, and there was, to a great extent, a decline up to about 70%. So we've recorded some successes, and there are some failures. But again, irrespective of that 70% decline, the volume of gas for flare is still worrisome. That up to the extent that we flare close to 750 to 800 million scoop of gas per day, which is enough to double our power utilization generation. And so if you look at the domestic industrial market, which we utilize around 450 million cubic feet of gas, we could triple that. So government said, okay, yes, indeed, the Zero Routine Flare initiative by the World Bank is 2030. The government said, Mr. President said we will do it by 2020.
10 years earlier. 10
years earlier.
Okay.
So we want to do faster than what the global standard timeline is. So we for once sat down and did, if you like, a diagnostic model and pre-feasibility of the options and why this has failed over time. And the key message there was that, number one, there was no clear policy direction. Number two, there was no focus on detailed implementation and design. And then number three, it was left in the hands of the producers. And then number four, there is no regulation to underpin that. So over time, you see now a regulation that says, an act that says gas flaring is not acceptable. And then it now says if you want to flare, you make a flare payment. And the flare payment... Like
a penalty.
Like a penalty. Okay. So you say don't flare, and I'm going to say if you flare, you pay this amount. And the producers are willing to pay 0.03 cents per thousand cubic feet of gas.
They did that because they argued that it was more expensive for them to create a structure to capture that gas. But in other climes, the producers were they do that themselves. So why was Nigeria?
So there are so many reasons why producers most times struggle to, if you like, utilize this associated gas, what we call flare gas, that comes with the crude oil. Number one, there is poor state of infrastructure within and around the areas they operate for gas, which is capital intensive. Number two, the economies of scale is not there. Number three, they don't have the market for it most times. And then number four, most times they flare because they don't need it in situ at their site. So most times the producer uses it for power generation. Sometimes they use it for reinjection within the reservoir or gas lift to try to bleed the production well to bring more crude oil. So if all of that is not happening, and to avoid pressure or explosion, they flare. And then they prefer to make the payment. Okay, so
present day. Let's talk about the commercialization program, where it is right now. 3 years later, bring us up to speed on what the latest is. What we hear is that a number of companies have submitted bids, some have paid, and it looks like things are progressing. Bring us up to speed.
Good. So last year, July, Mr. President Muhammad Buhari approved the new regulation, the Flare Gas Prevention of Waste and Pollution Regulations 2018, to underpin the implementation of the Gas Flare Commercialization Programme. So in that regulations, we increased the gas flare penalty, which was one of the challenges that previous government have. So the penalty was too lethal, and again, another moral hazard around previous initiative was that when the producers make this payment, it is tax deductible. That's a moral hazard. So they pay and then they go back and then it's tax deductible. But what we're doing now is that it will be, so we try to mimic a carbon tax, the polluter pays kind of principle, where that you pay is strictly based on what you pollute and then you pay for it. And we're working with the National Assembly to change the physicals where flare payment will no longer be tax deductible. So bringing you up to speed, we try to, so the regulation gives teeth to the commercialization to buy. So before government back, but they can buy it. But this time around we can back and we can buy it. But when we buy it, we don't want to kill.
Okay, so while you're trying to fix the problem, or at least create an avenue in which the problem can be solved through bringing in private investors, you're increasing the penalty for gas flaring in the meantime.
Correct.
Okay. I'm just wondering, because they could argue that, okay, I mean, you found a problem and we might actually be, okay, there probably won't be potential investors themselves. So that's a gas company.
Right. So it's one way to make sure that the program is bankable. So if you look at the new regulation, the regulation will say that any producer that gives us inaccurate data, it will be tax deductible. So if you look at the new regulation, the regulation will say that any producer that gives us inaccurate data, it will be tax deductible. So if you look at the new regulation, the regulation will say that any producer that gives us inaccurate data, it will be tax deductible. So if you look at the new regulation, the regulation will say that any producer that gives us inaccurate data, it will be tax deductible. So if you look at the new regulation, the regulation will say that any producer that gives us inaccurate data, it will be tax deductible. So if you look at the new regulation, the regulation will say that any producer that gives us inaccurate data, it will be tax deductible. So if you look at the new regulation, the regulation will say that any producer that gives us inaccurate data, it will be tax deductible. So if you look at the new regulation, the regulation will say that any producer that gives us inaccurate data, it will be tax deductible. So if you look at the new regulation, the regulation will say that any producer that gives us inaccurate data, it will be tax deductible. So if you look at the new regulation, the regulation will say that any you pay a fine, or you go to prison, or both. The reason is this. The third-party investors coming into their acreages need to have that confidence that where they're investing in, there will be return on investment. So we couch the regulation and design the program, both the commercial and transactional structure, to make sure that it's bankable for third-party investors and lenders. Otherwise, they wouldn't come in. They were like, this is a risky business, which is what we've done. And so last year, after we got the regulation approved, we quickly finalized the commercial and transactional structure, and then we went public on the 26th of November 2018 and invited interested parties to express interest. So as at 22nd of March 2019, over 800 interested parties registered on our portal. And then all those registered now have a unique ID in the system. So what we try to do, we try to eliminate human interface with the third-party investors. Again, looking at the body language of Mr. President to ensure transparency. And so what we now did was that you now download the request for qualification package, basically to qualify competent third parties that will come into the NGFCP space. And then after you download the request for qualification package, you now submit a qualifying statement, what we call Statement of Qualification, SOQ. Now, as at 22nd of March 2019, we have over 200 people that have indicated interest that have submitted their Statement of Qualification, and that's a lot.
Speaking about qualification, what is the criteria, for this? What is it that the ministry is looking for in terms of what these companies need to have, maybe financially, from a technical perspective, to qualify? Right.
So in our design, we look at a few of challenges and project failures that had to do with people that, okay, this is an opportunity. They're rushing and they come in, and when they're given the opportunity to do it, they don't run the project, and then the project becomes a failure. We don't want that to happen. So what we now did was to have certain fundamental criteria: technical competence, financial competence, and there are other mandatory information. As a company, you must be a company that has a face. You must be registered in your country, or you must be registered in Nigeria. So we made it open for local and international participants to come into play. And then we equally look at, in the case of consortium, that you must have a legal representative. So all of those are the fundamental criteria, just to pre-qualify you that you're a serious-minded business. So in financial, we're looking at 3 years audited account of the business. So your financial equally, you must have a net worth without any encumbrances that you have $5 million US as a business. So that gives us some confidence that, okay, these are serious business people, and then let's move them to the next phase so they become qualified applicants.